I didn't start my, I forgot to click. Now it's going to start the recording, so I got to start that over again. Okay, we're going to be formatting text about internet history into what's going to eventually look like a magazine article about internet history. So we're going to cover a variety of formatting techniques here. We have our basic text written down, single space, now in this case, single space, no formatting, except we hit return at the end of each paragraph. If I click on my hidden symbols here, you'll see there's only returns at the end of each paragraph. So the text was wrapping, it's left aligned, it's single space, it doesn't look too exciting right now. So there's first thing I'm going to do here is go to Edit and do a Select All. Now that is to select all the text in my entire document. Once I do that, I can go to the paragraph format dialog box, which is under Format, and I can do a fair amount of my formatting for the text right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the alignment. We've already covered left, center, and right. For the first time, we're doing justified, and justified will line up the text on the left and the right neatly. And the way it does that, it adjusts space between words. So sometimes you get bigger gaps between the words. But a lot of magazine, newspaper articles are justified text. Now we're not indenting entire paragraphs, so that's why we're not putting anything there. But under special, we're going to do a first line indent, and we're going to do that 0.3. So you can either click this arrow or just highlight and type in 0.3. If you highlight and type in 0.3, you don't have to put the inches. It's already going to do it in inches. Okay, and while you're doing these changes up here, you can look in this preview box to see what this looks like. Then for spacing, we're going to go align spacing here, and we're not doing double, we're not doing single. We're going to do 1.5. And then we hit OK. And now we have all of our paragraphs formatted. They got a 0.3 inch first line indent. I can click here to deselect. They are 1.5 line spacing, and they're justified. And that's why you see the nice, neat line on both the left and the right. Now the next thing we're going to do is put this in 2 columns. So to do that, we're going to go to Format menu. We're going to go to Columns. Now by default, all your documents are in 1 column. That's why you don't normally think of it, because it's just 1 column for the whole document. Now they got several pre-made ones up here, or you can make a custom one. We're going to click on number 2 for its 2 columns. The only thing I don't like about the default is it puts a 1/2 inch between the 2 columns, which is pretty big. So I'm going to change that to a 0.3. So I just clicked the arrow here. You could highlight that again too if you wanted to. So when it took a little space out in between, it made the actual width of the columns a little bit wider. So we had 2 columns, 0.3 in the middle here for spacing. Hit OK. So now it looks like that. And as you may have figured out, columns go on the left, so any text you put will go down all the way to the bottom. And when it gets to the bottom on the left of that page, it'll go to the top of the next column over. Then, of course, when it gets to the end of that, it goes on to the next page. Yes, this will be a 2-page document, so don't worry. Yes, it's going to go to the next page. We're actually going to fill the next page after we put more stuff in here. So that's pretty much where we left off of in the yesterday. So with the exception of, I'm going to add a computer picture. Now, you could get pictures from the internet and insert here. I'm going to show you how you can get one from built-in kind of clip art pictures. So we're going to go to, you can either go to the Insert menu and go to Photo and go to Photo Browser, or you could go over here where it says Insert on the Home. This is the Home tab. And over here on the right, it says Insert, it says Picture. You pull that down, and there's Photo Browser again. So either way will take you to this exact same photo browser. Now when you first get to the photo browser, it may not look like much there. We don't have any photos in our library. But you can go over here to clip art. Actually, we could have went straight to clip art because that's where our graphics are. But either way, we're going to go to clip art, and we're looking for a picture of a computer. When we scrolled down yesterday, we found several right away. There's one right there. There's one here. So scroll down a little bit. I don't care which computer picture you use. We just want a picture of a computer. So I'm going to click on this one right here. And then you can literally drag it. Okay? I don't know if you if you double click, it doesn't do anything. So I'm just going to drag it out here and let go. Now when I first let go, I'm going to close this out now. It'll just literally drop it somewhere in our document. Now the last thing we left off with yesterday, and then we'll all move on here, is right now this is being treated like it's part of the text. So right now I can't move this. It's just there wherever I dropped it. Okay, we want to be able to move it. So click on it to select it. Go up, now you have to actually double click. When you double click, you get this format picture menu bar up here. And we could do a lot of things to it. But right now we're just going to focus on changing the text wrap. So what is text wrap? Text wrap is where you can wrap text around either a graphic or a photo or even another text box. So we click on this here, double click it, format picture menu comes up. We go over here on the right to where it says wrap text. We pull this down and we go to the one called tight. Now tight will do a couple of things. First of all, we can now move this wherever we want. Okay, you can drag it around, and you guys do that right now. Try it in a couple different locations. Because what we ultimately want to do is not just have it wrap, we want it to look good. Okay, looking good means sometimes I drag it somewhere and it doesn't look quite right, and sometimes it looks better. And you look at the text around it. Now this outer border here you can drag, and you can make your image a little bit bigger. So if you want to try a little bigger size, you can make it a little smaller if it looks too big. Okay? And you can deselect at any time. So what did that do? The tight wrap does a wrap of the words around it. So you can see the words go right around it. Now let's click back on it again, everybody. Go back to wrap text, and we're going to try a couple of these other ones to see what they do. Go to the one that says square. It's right above tight. Now look what that did. It put a square around the whole thing. So it didn't do a tight wrap. It just wraps around the outer box. That may look better for what we're doing. Okay? Now we're not going to do all of these here, but if you want to try a couple out for the heck of it, one's called behind text. So that literally would put your image behind the text. You don't see that very often. Usually when you do, they make the image like kind of more lighter or almost see-through. But you could do that if you wanted to. You could do it in front of text. Now that not only puts it in front of the text, but it's literally blocking text behind it. So I don't know why you would use that one, but probably somewhere there's somebody that has a reason to do that. And then they got top and bottom where it puts the text above it and below it, so none goes to the left or the right. Okay? And then they got through where it just goes through there somehow. That one I've never used. They got edit wrap boundary where you can click that and then make your own boundary. So you can literally pull these handles out here and make your own boundary of how you want it to look. Okay? So they give you all kind of options for wrapping text. Now, the two I'm going to let you choose from is do either tight or square, whichever one you think looks best for your document. So if you think that one looks best, do that one. If you think this one looks best. Now, even after you pick it, you still might have to resize it or move it around a little bit to get it to look good. Okay? So that's how you can wrap the text. And I use the tight wrap even when there is no text because it allows me to move the image around. So we've already done that, where we insert an image and do that wrap around it. Okay? Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to put a title across the top, but we're going to literally go above this, but it's not going to be in the header. So you might say, what are you going to do, Mr. Rio? We're going to make a text box. So go up here. Now, if you're in the format picture thing, because that's selected, deselect. Okay, we want to be back in the home tab. Now, we can go to text boxes a couple of places. We can go over here where it says text box, or we can go to insert and then go to text box here. Either one will do the same thing. They bring up your cursor ready to make a text box. Okay, then drag a text box across the top up here. So we're going above our text. And we're going to type internet history. And then we're going to highlight that. And we're going to make it like, let's see, maybe 24. Go 24, center it, and bold. Now we're centering it in the box that we made. So you might need to drag your box out a little wider. One way or the other, we want it centered up here. You can even make your box not very wide like this and just drag it. You don't have to do a perfect center, just get it roughly centered. Actually, dragging the box smaller like that would probably be better for what we're going to do next. Okay, so that's just a simple, we just made that with a text box. Now, why do you think we put our title in a text box and not in the regular body? Yeah, the regular body of this has columns, and there isn't really a good way to put it in there and not have it be blended with all the other text. So this is where using a text box works a lot better. Now we're going to make a second text box, so that's why I said dragging this in from the left and the right is probably a good idea. We're going to make a little small one over here. So you got to deselect the current text box. You don't want that selected. Then go ahead and click here and select text box again. And drag a little small one over here. What do you think we're going to put there? Your name. Put by, and then put your name. Now, if your name looks fairly small, okay, I'm going to deselect here. Now, my text box is actually blocking this a little bit, so I got to make it a little bit bigger. Okay, if you need to move it around a little bit, just as long as it's somewhere off to the side. I'm not real picky where it is. It's got to be above that opening text. Now, right now, by default, it makes a 12 point. If you want to make it a little smaller, I'm going to make mine 10 point. Okay, then I can bring my box up a little bit. Now, you can move this whole box around too, you know, so if it's not quite where you want it, you can move the text box around, you can resize it. Now, if you can't see your text real good, you know, if you're at 100, you guys are in giant screens. You should not be at 100%. That's pretty small to work in. You should be at minimum 125%. And a lot of you could easily be at 150 and still not have a problem. So be prepared to zoom in, zoom out when you're doing fine detail editing. Okay, we're off to a good start here. We got an image in here. I'm going to actually move this over a tiny bit. We got our title up here. We got our paragraphs formatted. Now we're going to do something called a pull quote. Okay? A pull quote is where we pull a quote from our text and we blow it up big. It's used a lot in magazines and newspapers and that. So we're going to look for a good pull quote here. Okay, let's go down to the paragraph that starts with the World Wide Web was developed by Tim Berners-Lee and other scientists at CERN, the European Nuclear Research Center in Switzerland. Okay, highlight that sentence and include the period. If you accidentally don't include the period, you can always type one on later. Highlight that and copy it. Now, I think I've covered cut, copy, and paste a few times, but in case you're a little rusty on that, after you highlight that sentence, go to edit. Now, the difference between cut and copy is this. They both put a copy of this onto the what's called pasteboard, which is kind of hidden, or clipboard, which is kind of hidden inside your software. You don't see the clipboard. Now, the difference is if I copy it, it leaves it as is. In other words, it made a copy, but it did not remove that text. If I cut it, it will remove that text. So if I were moving that text to another part of my document, I could cut it, and then I could put the cursor where I want it and paste it. So it would remove it, and then you could paste it somewhere else. When you copy it, it leaves it right there, so you don't look like anything happened. You can also do a Command-C. And then what we're going to do now is we're actually going to make a text box. Let's go down on our second page over in the blank area to the right. Okay, we're going to actually make our text box there. So go ahead and make a text box. So you're going to drag a blank text box like that. Now with your cursor in the text box, do a paste. So you can either do Command-V or go to Edit and go to Paste. That will paste in what we just copied. And by the way, once something goes to the clipboard, which means you either copied or cut it, you can paste it in numerous times. Okay? Now what we're going to do here, we're going to format this a little bit. We're going to highlight it. We're going to make it slightly bigger, make it 14 point. We're going to make it italic. Okay? And then drag your text box so it's slightly bigger than your quote, but not a lot bigger. So you see how I resized my handle here? I didn't want that. Okay, you'll see why in a moment. Okay? Now we just created our text box with our quote. Okay, everyone with me? No, how do you, all we did was highlight a sentence of text, copied it, made a new text box in this blank area here, and we pasted it in there. Okay, if you're having a problem, we'll deal with it at break. We're getting close to break here. Okay, so right now we're going to drag this up, our text box, and put it on the first page, and put it down below your computer. It's not going to be a caption, so we want these to be in two different areas. So you might need to spread them out a little bit. You see where we're going with this here? This is, you see this a lot in magazines and sometimes newspaper articles. It'll be right in the middle of what you're doing. There's all this like a big quote there. Okay? Now, right now, the only thing I'm not happy with is I might want to change the font on this, because this font, you don't have to have it in the same font as your other text. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to look for something that looks a little better for a pull quote. So I'm not sure what that is. I just highlighted the text. I dragged it up here. Now mine automatically is wrapping. Is yours automatically wrapping? Okay, if it's not, you can select, you can go up to text wrap. I'll go back to that in just a moment. You want something that's easily readable but looks a little more distinctive. So I'm not sure what that is until I play around with some fonts. I don't want something that's too hard to read. Like if I do something like this, that's too hard to read. You don't want something like that. You don't want, let's see here. This is a little bit slow opening up. I'm just going to try something out here. I kind of have an idea what I want, but I'm not seeing it. Maybe Avenir will work. Let me try Avenir. Okay, it's not ideal, but this will probably work for now. I'm going to make it bold also. Now, sometimes pull quotes are bold and sometimes they're not. But first of all, this is a text box. If it's not wrapping, just like an image, you click on the box, make sure it's selected. Go up here to wrap, and you can do, excuse me, I have to double click on the border of it. Sorry about that. Double click on the border of it so we get this format toolbar. Okay, then I go to text wrap. Now I can do any of these. I could do tight. Usually don't do tight with a pull quote. I can do square, which is normally what you do with a pull quote. Now I can also resize this box. Do I want it to look more like that? Do I want it to look more like this? You want it to look good. That looks pretty good right there. I might just need to move the whole box over a little bit. Now I'm also looking at the text around it. Okay, that looks a big kind of weird gap there, so I'm going to drag it up a little bit. Okay, so you're trying to make it look good with the text around. That looks a little better there. So I'm going to deselect. Now I'm going to go back to a full page view here before we go on break, just to see what it looks like. Now that's where we're going so far. So I'm not saying that's 100% perfect, but that's not too bad. So we're looking at this and saying, is this starting to look like something I might see in a magazine? We have a title of it. We have our name up top. We have our paragraphs in 2 columns, and we did all that paragraph formatting. We have an image of a computer to get your attention that this is something about the computer. We have a pull quote in the middle, so if someone hasn't read the article yet, they might look at the pull quote to get a little more idea what it's about. So pull quotes are usually either directly what the article is about or something significant in the article. So that's pretty much gets right to the heart of who developed the World Wide Web, and being that the topic up above is internet history, that would be something that relates to that. Okay, this is like part 1. We'll do part 2 after the break. So I'm going to go ahead and